Imagine a quiet night at your local bowling alley. The hum of conversation, the clatter of pins, the glow of neon lights. It feels safe, familiar, ordinary. But on one January night in Littleton, Colorado, that sense of safety shattered forever. By the end of the evening, 3 people were dead, executed inside the AMF Broadway Bowl by a faceless stranger who vanished into the night. And more than 20 years later, no one knows who did it or why. The victims were 29-year-old Jim Springer Jr., 26-year-old Erin Gola, and 23-year-old Bobby Zios. None of them could have imagined the horror waiting for them that night. They were co-workers, friends, and in many ways just like any of us, trying to build a better future, working long hours, making plans for the week ahead. But on January 27, 2002, those futures were stolen. Jim Springer Jr. had only been in Colorado for a matter of weeks. Born in Connecticut and raised in Utah, he had recently taken on the role of assistant manager at the AMF Broadway Bowl. He'd started on December 3, 2001, less than 2 months before his death. AMF had given him options. He could relocate to New York or to Salt Lake City, but both of those choices seemed risky. New York had just been devastated by the September 11th attacks, and Salt Lake City was buzzing with tension as it prepared for the Winter Olympics. Jim wanted something quieter, something safer for his wife Jenny and their 2 young children. So he chose Colorado. It was supposed to be a place of stability, a place where his family could feel secure. Tragically, that belief would prove to be deadly. But Jim wasn't the only one with plans that night. 2 others were also walking straight into danger they could never have imagined. Working alongside Jim that night was snack bar manager Erin Gola. At just 26 years old, Erin carried a heavy weight of responsibility. She was a mother of 2 young children, doing everything she could to balance long work shifts with caring for her family. People who knew her admired her determination and strength. She was exhausted, yes, but she was also resilient, trying to carve out a better life for her kids. Then there was Bobby Zios, only 23 years old. Bobby was known for his love of bowling. He wasn't just a casual player. He was talented with multiple perfect games to his name. He practically lived at the AMF Broadway Bowl, and he was known and loved in the local bowling community. Bobby's life was at a turning point. He had recently ended a long relationship and was eager to start fresh. He had just secured a job with the Colorado Department of Transportation and was even considering pursuing a degree in accounting. His whole future was ahead of him. 3 lives, 3 stories, and within hours, all of them would end inside the same building. That Sunday night, the 3 of them worked the closing shift. Everything seemed routine. Shortly before midnight, Jim called Jenny, just as he often did. He told her the alley was closed up, that he was waiting for Erin's ride to arrive, and that afterward he'd be giving Bobby a lift home before heading back himself. Jenny thought nothing of it. It was just another night, but it would be the last time she ever heard his voice. At 11:50 p.m., Erin's friend pulled up to the alley to give her a ride. They waited outside, expecting her to emerge within minutes. Instead, something unsettling caught their attention. A bald man wearing a trench coat walked out of the building. It was strange, but they didn't yet realize what it meant. Minutes passed. Erin never came out. Concern grew, and the friend decided to step inside. What they saw was a nightmare frozen in time. Inside the AMF Broadway Bowl, 3 people lay dead. Jim, Erin, and Bobby had all been shot. The safe had been emptied, cash taken. But this wasn't the scene of a simple robbery. It was carnage. Whoever had done this didn't just want money. They wanted lives. That fact became even clearer when detectives learned the bowling alley had already been robbed just weeks earlier. During that first robbery, no one was harmed. So why, this time, did the crime turn into a massacre? What had changed? And here's the chilling part. The bowling alley had already been robbed just weeks earlier. During that first robbery, no one was harmed. So why this time did it turn into a massacre? What changed? Police immediately launched one of the most intense investigations Littleton had ever seen. They interviewed staff, customers, and anyone who might have had a connection to the alley. They scoured surveillance footage and chased hundreds of leads. Erin's friend worked with officers to create a composite sketch of the bald man in the trench coat seen leaving the building. That image was shared across the state, and tips began to trickle in. But each lead dissolved into nothing. The killer had vanished without a trace. For months, detectives kept pushing. They explored every possible angle. Was this simply a robbery gone wrong? Or was it something deeper, more targeted? Theories began to circulate. And then, the investigation took an unsettling turn. Months after the murders, Erin's name surfaced in connection with other criminal activity. Her ties to a methamphetamine ring under grand jury investigation came to light. Could that have been a factor in the killings? Could the murders have been connected to dangerous people she crossed paths with? Investigators never confirmed her direct involvement in anything criminal, and no evidence linked those associations to the murders. But the suspicion lingered, raising chilling questions about whether the killings were random or calculated. Despite relentless efforts, the trail went cold. Littleton was left reeling, families were left shattered, and the AMF Broadway Bowl, once a place of laughter and community, became synonymous with horror. Years passed, the case remained unsolved, but the victims were not forgotten. In 2015, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation tried something new. They featured Jim, Erin, and Bobby in a deck of playing cards distributed to inmates across Colorado prisons. Each card displayed details about a cold case victim, hoping that someone behind bars might have knowledge they were willing to share. It was a creative, desperate move to breathe life back into cases that had stalled for years. And while tips came in, none of them cracked the mystery. Metro Denver Crime Stoppers still offers a reward of up to $2,000 for information leading to an arrest. It isn't much compared to the weight of the crime, but it's a symbol that the case is not forgotten, that justice is still sought for 3 lives stolen too soon. For the families, the pain never faded. Jenny Springer was left to raise her children without her husband. Erin's kids had to grow up without their mother. Bobby's parents lost a son who had so much promise ahead of him. Each family was left with not only grief, but endless questions. Who did this? Why? And why haven't they been caught? The silence around those questions is almost as haunting as the crime itself. The community also struggled. Littleton had been scarred once before, just a few years earlier by the Columbine tragedy. Now it was dealing with another senseless act of violence. People who had bowled at AMF Broadway Bowl no longer saw it as a place of fun. They saw it as a tomb. The randomness of the murders made it even worse. If it could happen there, to people just working an ordinary shift, it could happen anywhere. Detectives continued to revisit the case in the years that followed. Advances in forensic science brought hope. DNA testing, fingerprint analysis, digital databases, but still, nothing led to a breakthrough. The sketch of the bald man in the trench coat remained a ghost image, a shadow of a killer who seemed to disappear as quickly as he struck. Was he a drifter who vanished into the night, or someone who lived much closer than anyone suspected? And so, the questions remain, haunting the families and the town. Why that night? Why those victims? Was it a robbery gone wrong, or was there something far more sinister behind the slaughter? Did someone know Erin's connections and use that night as cover for a targeted killing? Or was the killer a stranger who stumbled into their lives and decided to end them? The answers never came. The AMF Broadway Bowl is no longer remembered for strikes and spares, for laughter and neon lights. It is remembered for silence, for blood, for 3 young lives cut short, and a faceless killer who slipped away into the dark. 2 decades have passed, yet the case remains one of the creepiest unsolved mass murders in history. Jim, Erin, and Bobby's names live on in cold case files, in playing cards passed through prison hands, and in the hearts of families who still wait for justice. Imagine sitting in that bowling alley on the last night it ever felt safe. Imagine hearing the sound of pins crashing, only to realize hours later it had been replaced by gunfire. That is the reality of what happened on January 27, 2002. 3 lives ended, a community broken, and a murderer still out there. If you want to keep these stories alive and hear more of the world's darkest unsolved murders, make sure you subscribe, because the next mystery might be even darker.